Hey there. For this video I've put together an 80/80 walker from XPS insulation foam. It's not quite complete. I didn't put any weapons on it and its toes or anything because I'm going to put it on a diorama and I'm going to destroy it pretty much. Well, you know, sort of make holes in it and rust it up and put foliage on it and that sort of thing, and then place it on a diorama. And I didn't want little bits to break off, even though they should be quite strong. I didn't want to risk it, so I've just put the basics together with this. It's not even glued to the legs, it's sort of precariously sitting there. If I wobble it too much it'll fall over, because I don't know how I want to lay it down yet or have it standing. But that being said, yeah, it's an interesting little project to make. I enjoyed it. I found it a little difficult because I struggle with measuring, because I always managed to stuff it up. So I just kind of winged it and made some templates and that sort of thing, and it came out okay. I don't mind it. So I hope you get something out of this one, and I hope you enjoy the video. I made cardboard templates for all the pieces of this. I cut all the foam to about 7mm thickness for all the panels of the body and the legs. I pinned down the cardboard template that I made. I only made one. I didn't do double-sided ones because, well, couldn't be bothered. But I roughly cut this out with a little handheld wire foam cutter. It's a bit rough because it's the only tool that I have for doing this, but I fix things up later by sanding it anyway, so it turns out pretty good. Once I'd done it, I did sand each piece, all the ones that I remembered to sand. I did forget a few, but I sanded them because I want them to be porous later. And then I drew everything, all detailing was drawn in. I used the same tools over and over and over, like this stick, and I used it to push impressions down into it. I use the same tools over and over and over because I find that everything seems to have the same dimensions when you're building. So it works out. It's fortuitous sort of stuff. As you can see, the sticks that I'm using have the same dimensions all over. I made another tiny little template for the back or the insides of the legs. Don't forget to flip everything. You have 4 pieces for each, and then you have to flip them twice to have the mirror images of them. The feet, I did the same kind of thing with the templates, one for the top, one for the bottom, just so I could get an angle, because I couldn't figure any other way to get an angle when cutting. So I did it like this, kind of like a biscuit. And I did the same with the little top piece of the foot, just to get that angle. It worked out, and then I just drew in the pattern, the little top of the foot. I don't know what most of these pieces are called, but I used a pen to make an impression. You get a hole and a ring around the hole at the same time with a pen. I made more little templates, one for the top piece of the foot to get an angle going down, and then one for the bottom piece of the foot with the angle going up. And then I could meet them together and get the shape that I wanted. These might seem like odd ways of working, but it's the only way I can fathom to do it, so I just do what works for me. I'm sure you could come up with better ideas, I really do. These little pieces are just a thin piece of foam, and then I just made impressions and cut them out. Really basic stuff. As you see, I never measure anything. I do everything by eye. Though I do use a ruler sometimes to make straight lines. And I glue my little bits on. I just use this little container. Just have things all over randomly on my desk that I use to make impressions. I find something's the right size, I use it. Especially when doing things like circles or semicircles. And just make a deeper impression once I've made my mark. It's surprising how many things turn out to be just the right size when they're just random objects. These little details are what really make something. Impressions alone are not quite enough. I did the holes on the wrong side, so I'll fill them later. To make the little ball joint, I just used a skewer and a very rough file, and I filed the end down to round it off. And then just a little bit down, I used the sharper edge of the file just to make that little bit in between. Didn't take too long, it took about 4 or 5 minutes to make each one of these. That's one rusty file. I don't know where I've been storing that. Must be in a damp place. I used a little saw to cut that, it was really hard. And I just put it on with the leg. I used super glue. And I did not glue this down because I need to keep them moving. With all the pieces, as you can see, there are too many. But when you're making things like this, I've learned you need to be like the royal family and make spares, because you'll find in an emergency you're going to need spares. So always make some extra 1 or 2 pieces. With this little wooden piece, I used super glue to put a needle onto it or a pin onto it, because I want to insert it into the foam so it can sit there and dry. Because if you don't know, you don't use fuel-based glue, only use water-based glue on the foam, and it doesn't bond quickly, so I put the pin in just so I wouldn't have to hang on to it. Plus it makes it stronger, that's always a good thing. This piece of the ankle that would allow the foot to move back and forth, I cut it as a C shape, as you can see there, but I'm going to cut it in half so I can place it either side of the ankle to give the illusion that it is one piece. The reason I'm cutting it is because I don't know how I want to position the feet. I don't want them to be all exactly the same, because I obviously want maybe one at least of the legs to look like it's being lifted, so the ankle would have to be at an angle. Plus it allows you to cut it and place it in a certain way. I used a template the same as everything else just to make this shape as well, just a little C-shaped cardboard template. I'm glad I made extras of these because I stuffed up the angle a couple of times, so I ended up using all of them. I'm using pins all throughout the feet because I want them to be really, really stable so they can support the weight of the body that's going to be sitting up there later. I put them in every piece that I put together with the feet. And I used an entire pin too, so to just have the extra support from the full length of it. As you can see, there's more pins there just holding it all together because it's so, well, it's not heavy, but I mean, the balance of the legs with the body, it's going to be weighty in comparison. So I really, really want it to be as strong as possible. And there are the 4 legs. It took 4 days to do them. It was, I was getting over it by day 4. But they came out really nicely detailed. It was worth that little bit of effort. Just the pieces that will attach to the body that will hold the legs on. Done the same way as the legs with a template and drawn in with a pencil. As you can see, they're not glued down yet, because I don't know how I want to position it later on. Day 5. I'm just using a piece of balsa wood for the base because I couldn't get a piece of foam the right size big enough with the little tool that I used to make the base. But balsa wood's as close to the foam as you can get anyway. Just making the pieces for the underside. I used the same template to make these as I used for the foot. Just the same size, everything once again, just use the same dimensions and everything. It always seems to work out. And I'm just laying it out so I know exactly how big it's going to be. I used the file again just to get the rounded shape that I needed to get with the... I don't even know what this part of it is. Some part of the exhaust from the underside, I don't know. It came out quite rough, but I sanded it with a bit of sandpaper after that, and it's under the bottom. No one's going to see it anyway. I drew up templates for the panels of the body, and I cut them out. And the reason I'd use paper is because I'm going to use it to make this template for the body, but I'm also going to use the paper later because I can use it to make impressions in the foam instead of having to freehand draw on it. I was going to make the body out of cardboard because I once again couldn't get a big enough piece of foam cut the right way with a little tool that I used, but I ended up using foam core board. You do the whole body piece, and then when you've drawn that up and you've got your body, you cut it into the 3 sections that will be the outer pieces of the panels on the body. I think my over-explaining is making things sound complicated, but it's not. It's nice and straightforward. Definitely hang on to these. These are great. I wish I'd come up with this idea for the legs. It wouldn't have taken me 4 days to do them. When you've done this too, because as you know, you have to do a mirror image for the other side and flip it over. So just flip the paper over and then do the second panel for the other side. Just redo them. I've started to find that using a pen is better than a pencil. And that's all the pieces for the sides ready to go. And there is the top and the front and the back, and just the little detailing pieces as well. They were done exactly the same with templates that I drew on paper. You could even print something out and then make up a template from there. That'd be a great time saver, I am just now realising. I just glued these bits in with the water-based glue. It's really starting to come together now. It felt like all that labour on the legs was in the far, far distant past. It was nice putting these top pieces on. It really started feeling like I was actually really getting somewhere with it. And they look good too. The detail looks great on these. It picked up beautifully in the foam from using the paper templates that I'd made. I can see a patch there where I've missed the sanding in that centre panel. Head done the same way. I attempted to do this in one piece, being the lazy person I can be sometimes with it, but I realised I had to do just the same as the body and make panels for each side, top, bottom, back and front. cut it out and then put it on your foam, cut out your foam, use the paper template that you've kept to make the cardboard one and trace it. Oh, it's a beautiful process. I really, really wish I'd figured this out days before. I would have literally saved myself days of work. I really did discover using a pen is far, far better to draw on the foam with. I've been using pencil all this time and just happened to use the pen, and you can feel it when you're drawing on the foam. There's far less drag with it. Beautiful and smooth, and it doesn't move around so much. And that's the body done. Ready to start assembling. I glued 2 bits back on this. I realised I'd made it wrong, so that's why I don't throw pieces away until something's completely done. Make sure these larger pieces are on the outside. You've got to keep checking everything when you put this sort of thing together, because if you end up having a brain fart and you're not paying close attention, you might glue something down the wrong way, and then you got problems. These little panels, because they're kind of free sitting on their own and they're small, I just cut a toothpick to a good size, poked a hole in, and I glued them both sides down just to make sure it's not going to snap off if it's bumped. And this is the best glue I've ever used. It's so strong, it bonds so well, but I still don't want to risk it. To do the head, I just had put a little spacer between to stabilise either side, and after it dried I just laid it down for every single side. I just traced the inside of the shape of the head, because I know that if I tried to measure this it would be wrong every time until I literally whittled the foam down to nothing. So I have to do things this way. It's the only way it works for me. I find that my work seems to be a series of mistakes that are corrected over and over and over until it's right. It's a weird way of working. But it works. That's the main thing. And yeah, just flipped it over for every side and did the same process. These little pieces I cut off and I just drew over them all, glued them on. Just the little details. More basic stuff. It doesn't really need explaining. It's kind of looking at it is enough, really. I love how you can draw into foam. It's so good. I was going to draw these little pieces in, but I thought, I'll just make a few because they're so quick and easy, and it's nice to have more of a three-dimensional look about it than just impressions drawn in as well. I put the toothpicks in either end of the neck and made sure it was thoroughly drying overnight before I attempted to glue it down, because I didn't want things falling apart, especially while I'm not looking at it. Come back and find it's all wonky and completely stuck. That'd be disastrous. I've got to put bands on the neck and things like that yet, but I can't make them out of foam, and I don't want to wet anything down that's not foam, otherwise it may buckle, especially if it's cardboard. I just used a water base, black and dark brown mixed together in a spray bottle and then sprayed it because I really want it to get into every little impression and hole, which it does beautifully. Saves you poking around with a paintbrush. And that's why I sand it too, so it soaks it up really, really beautifully. I miss my brown ink. But this is good, this stuff works. It's really starting to look good. See where it's soaked in, and then that panel there at the back, I haven't sanded that, I haven't sanded it well enough. The under piece there, you can see how it's absorbed and it's almost grainy looking. The back piece there, I didn't sand that. You can see it just would not go into the foam. And you can see where it's sanded, how beautifully it soaks up, and that's what I'm always after. I want it to go into everything, so I'll have to sand those bits and just redo them. After giving it another coat with that the second wash out of the jar, I just gave it a very rough dry brush, and I do mean rough, I do it quite heavy because this is porous. If it wasn't porous, I'd do a very light, gentle, airy fairy kind of dry brushing. But this needs to be more heavy-handed because I really just want to paint and put a layer of paint down, but lightly. So it's kind of dry brushing. Just use a toothpick to clean the paint out of any of the impressions that I don't want it in. Same deal with the legs, just a heavy dry brush. Different directions, avoiding going in the directions of the impressions that I've made, just so I don't accidentally fill them in. And this is everyone's favourite job, isn't it? It has to be. Just watching everything come to life with that first layer of dry brushing. It's almost like you're watching something become a three-dimensional object, even though it already is. There's something special about it. It comes out so good. I just love it. After that single coat, I'm just going to put down another very light dry brushing, much lighter, with just a bit of white and this lightish blue and grey, just to take the starkness out of the white, and just feather it on. Pick up more of the impressions, pinpoint, highlight, all sorts of little things. Plus it's fun. Who doesn't like doing this bit? Any opportunity to do it again. It's so light you almost don't notice it, but after you've done it all over, you can see a difference. It seems weird doing all this to know that I'm going to make it completely rusted and dirty and broken later. I'm a little bit anxious about doing it, to be honest. But I know it'll work out somehow. It always does. Just keep fixing it until it's right. And that's it. Balancing precariously on its very wonky legs. It took me ages to get it to stand like this because it's not glued. But I got it up there ready for the close-up. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you next time.